My sister Debbie was a typical small city girl that wanted to lead a different life. She was a nurse. She moved to Miami to start a new life. Debbie was supposed to report to work, which she always did. Never missed a shift, never called in, but she never showed up. And her nurse friends there were starting to get worried.
They called the police. It went out originally as a missing person case. I was on uniform patrol. I was dispatched there in the evening of August 6th. All the doors were locked. No windows were broken, no windows were open, no signs of forced entry.
Guilfoyle spots a large window on the second-floor balcony.
I know how to climb things, and it was really my only option. I got to the balcony with the sliding glass door. That's when I saw a human body lying on the bed. So I popped up the sliding glass door and went inside. The victim was lying on her back, on the bed. It was obvious to me that she was deceased. It's not a natural death. This is a homicide. Some of her hair had been pulled out. I saw blood on her face and on her chest. And there was a gunshot wound right in the middle of her chest.
One of the things we discovered on the bed was her purse had been empty.
Debbie's friend tells officers that Debbie kept a gun in the purse found on her bed.
Then they processed the clothing, the bed sheets. They turned her over. That's when we saw the gun grips.
The medical examiner's autopsy revealed that Debbie hadn't just been shot. If it was just a burglar, they might have just shot her, right? Or they wouldn't have had a gun and they would have just beat her. But in this case, it was both. And that kind of indicates a level of intimacy, a level of it being personal between the killer and the decedent.
Debbie's father tells investigators his daughter was seeing someone new.
Everybody in the family really liked Alan. He was personable, he was gracious, friendly, he had money.
We found out the condo that she lived in had been purchased for her by her boyfriend.
Alan was fully involved in Debbie's life. With her friends, they would go out for dinner as couples. He came up to New York and met her mother and father. They said, "We're gonna be married."
But it's not that simple.
Debbie and Phil were still married, and Debbie knew that Alan was married too because he had a son, and he would bring his son over to Debbie's condo. When the detectives went into Debbie's condo, her divorce papers were on her nightstand. The official divorce had gone through probably about a week before she was murdered.
They went to talk to her boyfriend, Alan, and knocked on his door as homicide investigators.
Alan's wife, Honey, answers the door.
They said, "We're here to investigate the homicide of a Deborah Clark." The subject's wife got up and walked out of the room with a very upset look on her face.
Alan says at the time he was in New York at an auxiliary school for the Coast Guard. And he had an airline ticket that proved that he was in New York at the time that Debbie was murdered. So couldn't have been Alan.
Honey Bregman mentioned they had a landscaper by the name of Ray Sobel. And she also told us that Ray Sobel was the maintenance caretaker of the apartments where Deborah was killed. And that he had the key and access to the apartment.
Ray had been contacted by the police, but he was very reluctant to speak.
He lawyered up. Did Ray Sobel know what had happened? Possibly. Did he have an involvement in it? Possibly.
With no physical evidence, police can't tie Ray to the crime.
One of the items that detectives discovered early on was a life insurance policy that Debbie had purchased for herself.
Debbie bought the policy 5 months earlier, in April 1977, with a payout of $148,000.
5 weeks before the murder, Alan convinced Debbie, if you put your insurance in my name and something happens to you, I will get the condo and it'll be paid for. Debbie was found murdered on a Saturday, and Alan went and called the life insurance company trying to collect the money on Monday.
Alan's attempt to collect on the insurance policy is odd. The case of the murdered nurse goes as cold as that first ever Miami snowfall. And leads disappear just as fast as that snow melts.
Back in 1977, they had no idea what DNA was. We wanted to see what physical evidence we still had in our possession that we can test with current technology today.
We saw a photograph of a hair on Deborah Clark's arm.
We knew that the hair could have been left by the killer. Lab testing is one of those things that could take months, in some cases could take years. What we know about Alan is that he ultimately moved to Boca Raton. He raised his son. He didn't really have any other run-ins with the law. Alan Bregman's wife, Honey, had already been deceased by that time.
Honey died 11 years earlier in 2004. Ray Sobel, however, is still alive. He agrees to meet with Detective Denmark.
Ray expressed to us that he had no involvement in Debbie's death. His relationship with Alan was no longer there, so he was willing to tell us what he knew.
Ray Sobel says Alan Bregman had gone to a Coast Guard search and rescue school in New York. He had completed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and got the phone call that his wife had found out about Deborah Clark.
Ray tells detectives that Alan returned to Miami from New York on Thursday, the day Debbie was murdered. Detectives Denmark and Grossman still need to prove Alan was even in Miami when Debbie was killed.
Alan changed his airline ticket.
What we discovered was he changed his date of arrival from Sunday to Thursday. And that's when we believe the murder took place.
He's lying.
After 2 months, analysis on the hair police collected from Debbie's body is finally complete.
There was a familiar match to that hair.
It comes back to Alan or his son or his father. Because we had probable cause against Alan Bregman, we were able to obtain a search warrant for his DNA.
The now 75-year-old real estate agent meets detectives at his lawyer's office.
We got a phone call saying his DNA matched.
The decision was made to prepare an arrest warrant for Alan Bregman. Upon receiving the information that he moved from Boca Raton to North Carolina, we immediately contacted the local authorities in North Carolina. We told them to please go to his residence right away and to physically arrest him.
The prosecutor charges Alan Bregman with second-degree murder, since he can't prove Debbie's death was premeditated. The trial of 75-year-old Alan Bregman begins. Alan pleads not guilty to the second-degree murder charge.
The jury had to make a finding not only that he murdered Debbie, but he did it with a firearm.
When they said the verdict was in, you could have heard a pin drop.
When that verdict come back, as this one did, guilty, it's a huge relief.
42 years after Debbie was killed, Alan Bregman is found guilty of second-degree murder by a firearm. He's sentenced to life in prison.
We often wonder, why doesn't he just admit it? I just wish he could just come clean and say, this is what happened. I'm so sorry. I did love her. I loved your sister. Because that would be nice to hear. She was the best sister. She's never forgotten.